Mohammed Al-sadoun was born in Baghdad, Iraq. He received a BFA from the University of Baghdad, Iraq in 1979. In 1985, he attended the University of Connecticut, where he received an MA in art education. He is one of the leading contributors to the contemporary Arab art movement. His work involves the use of unconventional materials and concepts. This includes found doors, fuel, latex, wall paint, acrylic, glues, and fire.
We went to a beautiful town called Qasr Shirin at the border between Iraq and Iran, and I saw destruction everywhere. Houses removed from the ground, mountain burned, trees, everything, with sadness and a sense of anxiety and being in a war zone for the first time in my life. And since that day, I started collecting real objects from the front zone, such as military uniform, anything that the fighters, soldiers basically use during their fighting and life. At the end of the 80s, almost before I left Iraq in 1989, I was doing painting in downtown Baghdad in my studio, where suddenly the area was shocked. There was a huge explosion, and I ran to escape from the building because the building was about to collapse. And I saw people, Iraqi people, running in all directions. And suddenly we ended up with a huge hole where a couple females, Iraqi females, were crying and people screaming. And it was an Iranian missile hit the area, destroyed houses, killed several people. At this moment, my attention was focused on one door. It was still burning, and I left the scene with anger. Come back at midnight, I still see the door smoking. I took the door to my studio, which was very close. I could have been one of those victims. When I took the door, I look at it. It was in a sense beautiful, but also tragic. I started working on it completely in a darkness. I turned the light off as a protest, because the war, it is not about light. It is not about happiness. It's about destruction. It's against humanity. It is not good to have war at all time. Then I complete the work. It was the next day morning. I look at it. It was beautiful. The work was selected for an Iraqi exhibition at the Arab Institute in Paris. And it was the first time, I believe, a piece like this was done in Iraq with a technique using burn and using traditional materials. Since then, I become fascinated with the doors, because simply if you look at the situation in Iraq or Palestine or the 15 years civil war in Lebanon, we ended up with destruction, hatred, and sectarian violence, which does not make any sense.
Mohammed Al-sadoun is against all violence in the Middle East and believes it's his right as a citizen and an artist to protest. Mohammed Al-sadoun believes his doors are a symbol of hope as well as tragedy. He thinks that doors represent hope because they provide privacy and help protect family values. Mohammed believes that the threat of violence is in direct opposition of humanity. He began using doors and created burns on them, as well as using acrylic paint to create a burned appearance. Mohammed realized that found objects represent reality.
In postmodern art, we should move away from formal approach of art, where we could focus on ideas, concepts, The artist should have responsibility. The idea of art for the art's sake is gone. It is dead. The artist, like a novelist, like a poet, like any member of the community, should have responsibility, should not be silent, where you could see something bad committed against humanity. We should stand against this. My work sends a strong message in this direction. As you look at my work, you see behind me 3 artworks represent, clearly chairs with books, the chairs tied, and it might make the viewer think what exactly I'm trying to say. What is the message behind this? To me, books, as you know, represent freedom, represent knowledge, represent civilization. And when you see a chair in such position tied, you might ask yourself a question: what does really the chair represent? To me, in this situation, chair represents a scholar, a common person, a writer, an artist who could not express himself. Unfortunately, we are in the Middle East, an ancient civilization where writing exists in Iraq and other parts of the Middle East. Unfortunately, in a modern time, we experience some kind of injustice where most writers, poets, thinkers in our area cannot express themselves, cannot have the freedom they are looking for to communicate with their audience. So these chairs about censorship, about the forces, strange forces that prevent people to express their ideas, to be free, to celebrate life. The book, again, it also a beautiful object in terms not only has a political or social significance, but it's a materials. It can provide me with the things that I'm looking for: the texture, the color, symbolism. One of the work behind me is actually a chair with a bunch of books and some writing in Arabic. I was inspired by a great poet, Bayati, who was my friend, and I was to work with him as an editor in Rawak magazine, as an art journal. Bayati with Sayyab established the movement of modern poetry in the Middle East, in the Arab world. To me, this is significant. Bayati lived on his life in exile. And actually, when I left Iraq in 1989, I was carrying with me a letter to him. I found him by chance in Madrid. We talk about this. We talk about the idea of exile, why he spent all his life living outside of Iraq. In this chair could represent also in some way Bayati or Sayyab or Mahmoud Darwish or any great Arab poet who tried to defend his cause, to talk about problems in our society, in modern culture. And this is my own interpretation, not necessarily the viewers still have different also explanation of my work. And I heard so many beautiful comments during my show opening on July 17th. People found also these pieces interesting. They have strong political and social significance, not necessarily connected only with the Middle East, but with humanity as a whole. The chairs as found objects are significant in our life because they are part of our life at home, offices, everywhere. But in this context, as you look at them, they represent a person, a thinker, any person who actually have a problem to express themselves freely. And as I mentioned earlier, when you look at one of those chairs and you read the poems by Beatty, the chair could tell you or send you or convey a message that is about censorship.